Hey, thanks for listening to the Cascadian Beer Podcast. Just before we get into this episode, just wanted to say that this was recorded before the COVID-19 crisis hit and forced the closure of many small businesses around the world, including in British Columbia. At the time of the release of this episode, some businesses are starting to open again. And so if you want to go and visit your local breweries again, be sure to check out their social media accounts and their websites for the latest open hours and policies to attend their tasting rooms. At the moment, it's still really not encouraged to travel widely apart from your local area, but that doesn't mean that you can't spend this time to plan a little holiday once we're allowed to move a little more freely around the Pacific Northwest again. In the meantime, I hope you do enjoy this episode. Have fun, be safe, and remember, support your local. This podcast series has been made possible by the BC Ale Trail. Arrive thirsty, leave inspired at the bcaletrail.ca. Welcome to the Cascadian Beer Podcast. My name's Aaron and I'm a Cascadian. In this podcast series, I profile unique breweries around Cascadia, a region that has a strong presence in the international beer scene. Cascadia is a bioregion in the Pacific Northwest of the North American continent. It's made up of the U.S. states of Washington and Oregon, as well as the Canadian province of British Columbia. If this is your first time here, welcome. I sure hope you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and be sure to tell a friend. It helps grow this podcast series. In today's episode of the podcast, I'm focusing on a single community on Vancouver Island. Mid-Island is where you'll find the communities of Qualicum Beach and Parkville. Located here are two different types of breweries. In a bit, I'll be speaking with Mount Arrowsmith Brewing, but at first, it's the owner and brewer of a very, very small brewery located in the community of Qualicum Beach.
My name is Dave Paul. I'm the sole proprietor and head brewer at LoveShack Libations, my little one-man show here in Qualicum Beach, British Columbia.
And we're not like in Qualicum Beach proper, like we're kind of a ways out, right?
We're just on the outskirts. I'm probably 50 meters across the city, across the town line. So technically I am in Dashwood. So if you see the Dashwood Fire Hall, you've gone too far if you're headed north.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how long have you been open?
As of 2 weeks ago, it'll be 3 years and 2 weeks.
And we're taping this in March. So
yes, February, I opened February 11th, 2017.
All right, cool. And how did beer find you?
Home brewing.
Yeah.
It found me quite well. I was home brewing for years and thought I was making pretty good beer, and then built an all grain system and discovered I had been making bad beer. And then I started making better beer. And then I had 200 liters in my crawl space and was looking at bigger equipment. And my wife said, why don't you just open your own brewery? And I thought, that's a great idea, especially since you suggested it.
Yeah. It's not my crazy
It's not my idea. Yeah.
No.
I wasn't even thinking of that. I thought it'd be too much work. And she suggested it. And I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it all myself and do it as small as possible. And here we are.
And here we are. We are actually taping this in your conditioning room.
Yes.
First time I've done an episode in a conditioning room, because it's great, because you are open right now. And I'm very thankful for your time to break away, because that's quite the crowd out there. Is that a regular occurrence here?
That is a regular occurrence. So with limited hours, so I'm only open Wednesdays 5 to 9 and Saturdays 1 to 5.
Right.
And when I am open, I am generally full. Pretty much the whole time.
And what is that capacity?
22 seats.
Wow. Yeah. And so we're talking conditioning room. We're sitting amongst the bottles. So like there's a lot stacked in here. Like how many days a week are you brewing?
On average, 3.
Right.
By summer, it's on average 4, but generally, so anywhere between 3 and 4 year round. That's 200 production bottles. They're 500 ml bottles, and I hand bottle and bottle condition everything.
And you just reached a major milestone the other day, didn't you?
So I figured out I have now hand bottled 90,000 bottles.
Right. And no draft here, right?
No draft. I've only ever bottled. I've actually done 2 20-liter kegs, keg conditioned. There's actually one hidden behind me right here for a tap takeover I'm doing Campbell River at the end of the month. And one 20-liter keg was taken before I had bottle conditioned it, and it was forced carbonated for a craft beer and wilderness retreat last year. And that was technically the first time my beer had been on tap.
Right.
And it was good, but I still like bottle conditioning.
Right.
I think it's just a different product.
Oh yeah.
I have beer in my crawl space at home from 3 years ago that's just getting better.
Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the big milestone anniversary beer that you'll whip out. Yeah.
Definitely. And the mouthfeel on it of bottle conditioning, I find is just, it's a different product, and I really, really like it.
Yeah. So with all these bottles, what is the size of that brew house you have back there? It's basically a very scaled up home brew setup, right?
Definitely. It is technically a 1-barrel brew house. So, and batches, I don't max the system out. So technically a one hect brewing system. So I generally make 100 liters a batch. So last year, for instance, for my reporting year, I made 163 hectoliters in a year. So that's good, because the liquor board, your minimum is supposed to be 150, and I made 163. Mm-hmm. But to put that into perspective, most breweries make that in 2 days.
Yeah.
Or a big week.
Yeah. I like how you're coming with all the numbers here, right?
Yeah.
This is great. So what is the brewery focusing on? Because it looks like you have a core lineup, and then you kind of have like some fun stuff that you're doing. So like,
so I have 4 mainstays that those were my first homebrew recipes that I scaled up, and I wanted a nice, you need the range. So I have a Kolsch, a cream ale, my version of an IPA, and then a porter. And then I generally have 4 features every week. And I release a new beer every Wednesday for my Wednesday crowd. And I generally roll 4 features, but then with the bottle conditioning, since there's no shelf life, I can come in here and pull another 4 at least that are still, I'll save the last case and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. There's a case of Snow White Stout right there and then there's those 6 cases up there. Those are for this year's advent calendar that I'm not going to touch.
Okay.
I do an advent calendar in the fall.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. So one phrase there caught my attention. My version of an IPA. What is your version of an IPA?
Well, it's called DPA, and that's for Dave Paul Ale. My name's Dave Paul. So I figured if I opened a brewery, I could name a beer after myself.
I think you have to.
Yeah. And it's just a little darker. So it's like a scaled down CDA. It's like a scaled down Cascadian dark ale, if you ask me.
Brilliant.
But not a true Northwest IPA, because it's a little darker. So I've got some chocolate malt in there, and it is a bit maltier, and it's nothing crazy on the hop level. It's about 50 IBUs, so it still tastes like an IPA, but you've got the nice dark backbone. I try all of my beers, but I have that many and I try not to drink too much, because it's way too easy to drink too much.
Yes.
Especially when have this many beer around.
Well, we're just sitting amongst it.
Sitting on it. Yeah. And so, I won't have a DPA for 2 or 3 weeks. And then, one night I'm going to have a DPA. And then I try it again. I think, this is why I started. This is why I started. And that was the first recipe that I made up myself.
Right.
And so it's near and dear to my heart for sure.
All right. So let's talk about the specialty things. Like what do you like to play with here?
Everything.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's another reason to keep it this small. I can make, as long as I keep up with those 4 mainstays, because I have those in the Shady Rest liquor store in town here. It's the only retail place that I'll sell to, and about 8 or 9 local restaurants, all small ones that I know and have a personal interest in. So then after that, I can make whatever the heck I want.
Right.
And I do make a lot of fun, interesting ones. And then a year and a half ago, I was approached by the anthropology professor from Vancouver Island University, whose whole focus of study is the food and beverage of ancient times.
Right.
And she said that they were looking for a small brewing operation to be interested in making ancient inspired beers.
Wow.
I said, well, I'm your guy. Everything I do is small batch, and I would love to try that. So since then, in a year and a half, we have made 6 different kinds of ancient inspired beers and multiple batches of. 2 of them, we've only done 1. The other 4, we've done multiple batches of. This Thursday night at the university, we're doing a tasting, an actual event. We're pouring all 6 of them. So they are fascinating. It's been such a learning curve of learning, and it puts a face to the past. Of course, they're not authentic. We're not.
No.
I'm not chewing the purple corn for the chicha we make, because that's terrible. A terrible idea. It makes my jaw hurt thinking about it.
Yeah.
So, they're ancient inspired. And my first thing with her was, I said to her, if we're doing this, number 1, they're going to be drinkable, and number 2, they're going to be sellable.
Yeah.
Everyone has gone over amazingly well, and they're each very, very unique and different.
Right.
Everything from the latest Norwegian farmhouse beer we made with yeast smuggled out of Norway by my Norwegian friend. And that is a raw ale that I've never done before. To the first one we did was this Midas Touche, which is based on an ancient Egyptian beer with organic Kamet spelt and emmer, ancient grains, and then coriander, saffron, and honey. And it tastes like a 7.5% golden honey ale.
Oh, man.
That's what I'm sitting on right now.
Right.
So luckily, we don't have an opener in here.
Yeah. Well, no, I do on my keys. They're just over here. Hey. Okay, we talked about the styles and everything. But I got to ask about the name. Where did it come from? I mean, like, did you end up spending all your jukebox money, or what did you do? So
everyone asks that, but no, it is the ringtone on my cell phone. I was in Whistler, and my wife and I had just had our child. But my wife actually grew up on the island here, and her mom offered to sell us part of an acreage right beside them, just up the road from where we are now, just north of Qualicum. And my wife, in her infinite wisdom, said, "That's a great idea. We'll sell our house and we'll live in a tent with our 9-month-old, and you can build us a shack." I said, "Well, I'm a waiter and a bartender. I don't think that's going to work." She said, "No, it'll be fine. You can do it. It'll only take a couple of weeks." So we lived in a tent for 6 weeks with a 9-month-old, and it rained 28 out of 31 days that May.
Right.
And I built a 12 by 16 shack that we called the LoveShack. Moved into that. We lived in that for 3.5 years while I built a house, and that's where I started brewing, was in the shack.
Right.
So then when we discussed opening a brewery, I said, "Well, I'm going to do it all myself. I'm going to call it LoveShack Libations." My wife said, "I think you're kind of crazy, but go to it. Have fun."
All right.
And haven't looked back.
All right.
Yeah.
Fascinating story on that name.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah. All right. So how was the opening in that whole thing with the community? How's the community's response been to you? Because you're not a traditional brewery.
No, especially not only being open 8 hours a week. So the support has been absolutely amazing. And even right away, it was busy right off the hop when I opened in February. And then just by the summer, it was shocking to me how busy you could get. And now, after the last 2 years, realizing that wasn't busy. Now I'm busy.
Yeah. Do you have lineups in the summer outside? Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the community support has been incredible, especially Wednesday nights. It's a lot of the same people. We have a local food truck that parks out front on Wednesdays.
I take it like Wednesdays is like really locals night instead of the weekend. Yeah.
Saturdays get a lot more people who have heard about me or got dragged here by family and friends on the island, or
people like
been
me.
told, you got to go check out that guy. He's only open 8 hours a week. You got to see him. But the really great thing about the tasting room is there's no cell reception. Yeah. So, and the tables, the way I've built the live edge tables, they're very, you're sitting right across from someone. So you can't look at your phone. And if you don't talk to them, you're a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
So the sense of community and people, the conversations have been fascinating.
Well, I was waiting for you, and the couple there was like, "Hey, this chair's open if you want to sit down." I'm like, no, I'm just waiting for him. Like, it's cool, thanks though.
So seeing that is great. Now, so people are coming back in just to see people they've met here before. They're like, "Okay, we'll see you next Wednesday. You coming back?" Yeah. So, and you get hipsters from East Van sitting across from a 75-year-old retired logger from just up the road. Where else are they going to strike up a conversation and have a great time, because the common denominator is beer. Yeah. So it really is working out.
Well, no, breweries are the community hubs. So yeah. And if they're other than that, then I'm like,
Why aren't you the community hub?
Yeah. So where does your inspiration come from then? Who are you turning to, like in the province, that kind of inspires you for beer creation and stuff here?
A lot of it is just what I think I want to drink next, to tell you the truth.
Right.
I make a hazy called Juicy Juice that I have to keep making because everyone loves it so much. But now, I just made a Mai Tai IPA. My friend Adam, the assistant brewer at Arrowsmith, he's like, "Hey, we should make a Mai Tai sometime." And as soon as he said that, I was like, "That's a great idea." But as far as breweries go and getting inspiration, Aaron at Twin City in Port Alberni is, to me, I'm not a huge sour fan. His sours are some of the best I've ever tried.
Right.
And then for what conveniently being this close to Arrowsmith, Dave Woodward, the head brewer at Arrowsmith, likes to, he'll drop beer off here. And if you want to taste what beer is supposed to taste like, what it's called, if you want a Northwest IPA, go try his IPA, because that is exactly what it is. He just released his Pilsner and he brought me a growler of it the other night. One of the better beers I've tried.
Oh, right. Brilliant.
Shocked and amazed.
And so then if somebody was to come out here and visit you, what is something that you would want them to leave with as an experience of visiting your place?
That sense of community, definitely. And the fact that the guy who made the beer is the one opening it for you and pouring it. And
every day, right?
Every day.
Well, every day you're open. Every day you're
all
open.
8 hours of that week.
Yeah.
And also, and if you are, and someone's in the area, and you can make an appointment and come see me, because I am in here generally 5 days a week. So you can drop in and just buy some. And locals know that now. So if they see my vehicle out front, I get people just wandering in.
Handbrake, turn around. Yeah.
Can we buy some beer?
Yeah.
But I want them to take away the fact that it's something special, right? The tasting room itself is it's unlike any other. I find it's just that small. You're sitting right amidst the brewing equipment. You're forced to talk to people, and it's just a fun, happy place.
And if somebody was wanting to go down the path of opening a brewery themselves, what would be some advice you could give them?
Have lots of time and have lots of money.
Right.
And have lots of patience, because it is a long, arduous process. And either go big or go small.
Right.
And do something different, because, there's almost 200 breweries in the province, and there's rumors of some closing down, and you've got to make sure you know what you're getting into.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Dave.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Huge thank you to Dave for his time. I just made it in time for opening, which is a shame, because I wanted to be there before things got too busy. But I was actually pretty glad that I was there to see everything really busy. And that's an awesome spot. I can't wait to go back and visit that tasting room again. And I brought home some really lovely beers from Dave, and they're still sitting in my fridge, and can't wait to open them up for some special occasions. And, I might have to put another order in. Now, before we continue, the COVID-19 pandemic has radically changed the way we are all living and working. But now we are slowly starting to reopen our small businesses here in British Columbia. Although travel is somewhat limited throughout the province, there's nothing wrong with planning a future trip, and that is what the BC Ale Trail is perfect for. On the website at bcaletrail.ca, you'll find recommended itineraries, a comprehensive list of every craft brewery in BC, a calendar of beer events, and a blog with lots of great stories. The regional ale trails include local breweries, pubs, and restaurants, along with other activities the area has to offer. So stay local for now, but as you plan your post-pandemic trip, let the BC Ale Trail guide you. Arrive thirsty, leave inspired at the bcaletrail.ca. Okay, time for the second brewery of this episode. They're located in Parksville, and compared to our previous brewery, they're the much more traditional size. So I sat down with Mount Arrowsmith.
My name is David Woodward. I am the head brewer here at Mount Arrowsmith Brewing Company. I've been here since the very start.
All right, and we're in Qualicum Beach, just outside of Parksville. I mean, that's... Which city are you leaning, or community are you leaning more towards?
Well, I was born and raised in this area. So, I like the community of Oceanside in general as a whole. Right. I'm actually living in French Creek, is right in between Qualicum and Parksville. So,
right.
So I go between both. My mom's in Qualicum. Some of my uncles and cousins are in Parksville. Others in Nanaimo. Yeah. That's right. I'm mid-island, basically.
Oh, yeah, cool. Mm-hmm. And how long has this brewery been open for?
We've been in operation since 2016, actually. Mm-hmm. So,
and you won at the BC Beer Awards Brewery of the Year when you opened up, right? The new brewery of the year.
That is correct. Yeah, yes. Yeah. We did that back in 2017. We started in 2016. We took about 6 months to get operational. Mm-hmm. So we were going by April of 2017, and then we started putting out beer. And then that year we won the Brewery of the Year for BC, which was pretty cool. 6 months open. So that was good.
Yeah. And so how did beer find you?
I was tinkering, making things with my hands, cooking, building. I was in stonemason for years, and I worked at a U-Brew in Qualicum, and I always liked making beer there. And then eventually I decided to get into beer making. Found about a course in the UK teaching brewing, as I figured, what the heck, and I don't speak German, so it worked out pretty well. Okay. And someone told me, in the best of times, people drink for joy, and the worst times they'll drink around sorrow, so you just have a job. So that's worked out pretty well so far.
All right.
Yeah.
So how long was that course?
It was about a 6-month course, British Brewing Technology, a brew lab at the University of Sunderland in the UK. So I lived in the north of England, right by Newcastle upon Tyne, near the Scottish border, and had a great time up there.
Well, what was the name of your pub that you hung out there?
I think it was the Fitzgerald's there. That was on Sunderland Main Street at the time. But there's lots of good pubs in everywhere. You throw a rock, you get a pub in England.
Yeah, totally. Do you miss a certain beer at all from those pubs?
I like beer-wise. I like my cask ales in England. I do miss those. We don't really do them really properly over here as much with the traditional beer engines and kitchening and the firkins and stuff. I just like the pub atmosphere, the culture. Every small village you go to has a little pub, and you get a food. South they have lots of gardens and stuff. So I do miss the UK. I'm trying to maybe I'll go back eventually.
Yep. So would you say your style is mostly UK, or are you what styles of beer are you focusing on here at the brewery?
I started brewing a lot of British beers. I still quite like the British ales and do that. I've sort of, as I moved out here, got into, when I was in Whistler, I worked at the Whistler Brew House there for 5 years and got into lager making because lagers are the most popular style of beer around the world. So I learned about proper lager production from some very experienced brewers at that company. And then, then I sort of, as I went over here, came back to Ireland back 2010, helped start a brewery on the west coast of the island here. I mean, starts with tea. I'm sure people know that.
Yeah.
And then, then I sort of got into foraging when I was out there. So I was veering towards West Coast style beers, more drier, hoppier stuff. And then I got into things like going out the woods and Sitka spruce, which I quite love now. And I really like making beers with that. So I got into foraging that, mushrooms, which sort of using a few beers here and there. And other things I can find in the environment to put in the beer. That's sort of my jam these days.
I'm going very island focused and.
So what can we find in the environment? Sustainable and tastes really good.
Well, does your malt come from the island at all, or some of it?
Not currently. I'm mostly getting it from companies that grow mostly in Saskatchewan and Alberta. There are some BC available malts, and there are some people growing barley on the island, but I'd like to get at it eventually. Unfortunately, I don't have a malting facility to deal with that, so that's the problem.
Yeah. And then what about hops? Where are those coming from?
Those are currently coming mostly from Yakima, Willamette Valley. I get them imported. I use some BC and island hops for doing wet hop beers in the fall. I quite like doing that once a year. It's quite a nice thing. Also import some European hops, and I quite like the Australian, New Zealand hops. So I kind of sort of like to pick and choose what I want for the beers.
Right.
It tastes really good, sustainable.
Yeah, I lived in New Zealand for 8 years, and I do miss those hops. What's your favorite off the top of your head?
There's Nelson Sauvignon. I quite like that one there. Motueka, if I pronounce that correctly. Yep. There's I like those really sort of winey flavors of New Zealand hops, and then the really outrageously tropical fruit flavors of Australian hops are quite nice too.
Yeah, I really like the Riwaka. So
that's another one, good one there. Yeah, there's so many good ones there too, and we're getting some new ones here in BC. Like I use that lumberjack hop, which is quite a nice one. Yeah. That's good, and that Sasquatch I've played around with a bit, so I'm looking forward as more BC varieties of hops come up and play and using those.
Yeah, and I tried the Brew 1 from Yakima too, so that one's really interesting. So
that sounds good.
Straight pineapple juice. So
nice. That sounds good. I'll have to put in a pineapple beer or something.
Yeah.
Meld up.
So how long did it take to build the brewery out?
It only took about. Well, the planning before I came on took a couple of years with my partners. And then, they also own a construction company here in town. So actually getting things built very rapidly was quite an easy thing. This is probably the easiest build I've been on. There's a lot less of the herding of cats when it comes to dealing with tradespeople.
Yeah, so. Or, like, what is it? The carpenter's house is never finished, right? Like those issues. So,
no, it's actually what came together pretty well. And so we got everyone in, all the ducks in a row lined up, and everything got done very well. And then the city council is very, very supportive of this. They like the idea of having a craft brewery in town here. So everyone's on board with that. So there's no opposition really to anything. So it's like, why not? So everything went really well. And the reception here by the public and the townspeople was great. People like having a local craft brewery to come and hang out and drink beer. So,
and I'm not too familiar with the community, but like we are like, in an industrial part, but are we kind of walking distance to like the residential area of town or?
We are actually. There's a small sort of trailer home park next door over there, and down the roads, there are lots of housing and residential suburbs. It's about a 10-15 minute walk from the downtown of Parkville, so it's not too far at all.
Right.
Yeah, Parkville's not a big city. You can get around pretty easily.
Yeah, bike easily.
Oh, very easily. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, we're touring the brew house here. What's the size of your brew house that you started with, and then we'll talk about this expanded room that we're sitting in. Yeah.
The brew house itself is 20 hectoliters in brew length. So that's a decent size for a production brewery. That is our focus here. So it works very well. And then all the equipment is made by Specific Mechanical down in Victoria, and all works extremely well. And then so basically, and then we shoved it all on the first side of things, and then we just had one little bottler in the corner there, and kegger and keg washing, keg racking and stuff while the brews are going on. So it was a little tight. And then after the first year, then we took over this second bay, which we're sitting in currently, and then expanded, got an additional bottler, put in more tank capacity for extra volume of beers, and and then more space to do things. And now we have our canner shoved in the corner here, which we're going to start firing up late next week, probably.
Yeah. So the new exciting piece of equipment. So with this canning run, then what's your distribution radius that you're looking to achieve?
Well, we are currently basically mostly based on the island right now. We are, of course, our home turf here in Parksville, Qualicum, Nanaimo, Exeter area, Courtenay, quite a bit. We also do quite a lot of beer in Port Alberni and then Tofino and Ucluelet, sell that. And we also are selling a fair amount of beer in Victoria itself down there, the cold beer wine stores and whatnot. We're mostly just island based right now. It just getting the beer off the island, it just is a little more extra effort and cost and stuff.
Oh, anything coming and going from this island, right? Is
pretty much, yeah. So it's like we're literally selling everything we make here. So not at this point, we're not really going to be doing distribution off island, I think.
All right. Yeah. Cool. And then with that, you talked about some of your inspiration in terms of ingredients. Who else on the island do you kind of turn to for inspiration for what they're doing for beer ideas?
Well, see, brewers and ourselves, we're very collaborative in our efforts and stuff here too. So, I will go talk to, let's see, I hang out quite a bit at Twin Cities in Port Alberni. I really like what they do there for their beers and stuff. So often when I'm going back out to visit Ucluelet or Tofino, I'll stop there on the way back and have a few beers and chat with them. I quite like Gladstone up in Courtenay. I'm quite impressed by what Land and Sea and Comox is doing there. Tessa, the head brewer there, she's doing exceptional quality beers. We actually did a beer last year with Grand Fur Tips, her and I, and it was like a Nordic Kvik beer with fur tips, which turned out excellent. So so that's sort of cross collaboration thing I quite like doing, and of course all my Victoria peeps down in Victoria too, and I still catch up with people on the mainland too, but it's a little harder to get off the island these days. Yeah, I'm very much focused on the island these days. But
So we didn't talk about the core beers. What's your core beer lineup here that you do?
Let's see. We got a range of beers. We got our first one, our Arrowsmith Blonde, which is basically a very good West Coast blonde, hopped with Chinook and Cascade. So it has quite a nice grapefruit bite to it a little bit. And when we first put out, some people were complaining, this is too hoppy and stuff. And then that one gold at the BC Beer Awards. And I was like, you know what? This is the best beer in the province. So you better just drink it. So it's won a few other things since then. So I'm quite proud of that beer. We have our Salish Sea Pale Ale, which is, again, a West Coasty, a little more malt forward, but nice hoppy West Coast Pale Ale with some nice British crystal malts and mosaic hops, which I quite like. Has a nice little passion fruit kick and aroma. Our Jagged Face India Pale Ale, which is again a very West Coast hoppy IPA. It's not the East Coast sort of lactose sugared sweet thing with the haze. It's very much a clear and bitter West Coast IPA, which I quite like, that sort of traditional beer. I also do like the East Coast beers. They're quite good too. It's just different, semantics, so to speak. So, and then also we have our low pressure porter, which is again West Coasty, more full bodied, nice roasty, chocolatey porter, very delicious beer. And what else am I thinking of? We just have our we just put out a Pilsner, the Boss Pilsner, which is a German-style Pilsner, or North German-style Pilsner, more drier, hoppier, cold fermented, cold aged, the whole 9 yards with it. No rushing. It's like 2.5, 3 months old now, which is exceptionally good for a good lager, and hop with German Mandarina Bavaria and Hallertau Blanc, which are sort of newer flavors for the European hops. The Germans quite liked our sort of flavors of West Coast hops, but they don't want to import any, so they developed their own varieties of hops that taste like ours, right? Which I think, imitation is a form of flattery. Yeah. That's good.
So we talked about this canning line. So some of those beers would be canned off, and those would be your regulars, and then you still have your bomber over here, and you'll still be doing specialty beers from time to time in those, right?
That is correct. Yeah, we're going to have our main brands in the cans, and then we're going to save the one bottler for doing some specialty runs on whatever. We will try to do like 3 or 4, maybe 5 times a year to put out something new and interesting. So we have the Pilsner right now. We might bring out our Sea Run Saison again in the springtime. That was a very popular Saison. It was another one I'm very proud of. Very good sort of Belgian style Saison with all Citra hops, which actually is a little different, but I quite like Citra. Yeah. So I just threw a whole whack in there and it tasted great.
I'm a big sucker for Citra. So.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite West Coast hops. And then the fall we'll be doing some other things there too. And I think actually Land and Sea and Twin Cities is a collab brew here, so I'm going to probably bring those guys in to do something in the fall.
All right, brilliant. Yeah. Well, if somebody was wanting to get into brewing themselves, what would be some nice practical tips you can give them to make better beer?
Clean the crap out of everything. That's basically what it comes down. Sanitation. A lot of homebrewers get into it, and then they wonder why their beer tastes a little funny. And I'll say, "Well, what'd you clean? What'd you sanitize with?" And I just use some hot water and soap. I'm like, that's not really that good. Beer is a perishable food product, so please get some proper cleaning chemicals, wear the appropriate safety gloves and goggles, and wash the crap out of it, sanitize it properly, and everything. Be very paranoid in your brewing process. Everything that beer comes in contact with, you have to think about.
So it's something you're ingesting too, right? So
exactly, yeah. So you also make sure the chemicals have been rinsed thoroughly and everything else there too. That's the main thing there. And also, I always say temperature. Some people don't seem to understand. Well, yeast is a living microorganism, and it's very susceptible to temperature fluctuation change. And if it gets too warm or too cold, it can stall the fermentation or cause a shoot out of control and create really horrible, harsh flavors. So again, temperature control is another tip I give for brewers starting out.
All right. Well, thank you, David, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming by. Let's try some beer.
Thank you to Dave Woodward for his time at Mount Arrowsmith. And thanks again to Dave Paul over at LoveShack Libations. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Both breweries are amazing. They're a short distance between each other. I highly recommend you go check them out. Big thanks again to the BCL Trail for making this episode possible. If you want to, look at the itineraries of possibilities mid-island, head on over to the bcltrail.ca. For previous episodes, more information, and, to follow this podcast series along, come check us out at the website cascadian.beer. Also hope that you're subscribed in your podcast app or wherever you've listened to this so you don't miss future episodes. And thank you again so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, remember, support your local.